Hi there, Melissa. How are you today?
Good, good. Sorry, I've got a big message in the middle of my screen. I'm
Oh,
gonna
that's a
just tell it.
problem. Well, I'll
I
just
know.
carry on and you can handle
There.
your issue.
Oh,
So,
good.
yeah. So, hi, everybody. If you're just joining us, my name is Megan Holmes, and I am sitting here at my needlepoint shop in St. Louis, Missouri, actually in Kirkwood, Missouri. It's called the Needlepoint Clubhouse. And together with my friend over here who has an issue on her screen, who
Oh,
is,
I picked it.
oh,
So
good.
Melissa Cloud here at the Wool and the Floss in Grosse Pointe, Michigan, just outside of Detroit. And look at the tote bag over my shoulder. Do you see?
Oh, yay. Isn't that good product placement? I love it. So, together we
It was an accident.
yeah. A lot of things we do are happy accidents. So that's good. So together we do what we call the Pointing It Out podcast. And we've been doing this for about 2 years now. So if you've stumbled upon this particular episode, if you go to our channel, you'll note that we've got quite a catalog now of topics and discussions, all related to the needlepoint industry. And we even now have started this very cool thing called the Pointing It Out Podcast Retreat, for which those bags were printed that are over Melissa's shoulder. And we are just delighted that we have this awesome community and to be able to share some of the great stories and things that are going on. But we came up with what we think is a pretty fun topic today. And Melissa, I'll let you talk about that.
I am surrounded by so many fun objects. So as none of you will be surprised to know, Megan and I love to stitch, and we especially love to work with variegated thread. So this is just a quick overview. This is an ornament. I was fortunate enough to go to Prague. Thankfully, I embroider everything in July of 2014 because I would not have remembered that.
Good idea. Good tip.
But there are all sorts of variegated threads in here. The sky is a variegated thread. This sparkle on the rooftops is variegated. A lot of these buildings are variegated, and there's so much you can do with variegated threads. And what I personally love about variegated threads, and I've talked about this before, and I feel like people always think like I'm disparagingly talking about myself. I'm not. I'm just being very honest. I'm kind of a lazy stitcher. So if I can get something else to do the work for me, like a thread that we're going to talk about a lot of these threads, but a thread that changes colors for you and you don't have to do all the shading, have at it. Like that's where I'm at. So there's just lots of variegated threads.
It's true. And I have conveniently placed myself. Unfortunately, you only had one spot and you picked a great one with that bag over your shoulder, but I'm sitting actually in what we call the cotton room here at the shop. And to your point, there are a ton of overdyed threads, but I happen to be sitting just with our cotton. So we're going to go through a lot of different types of threads, some that have sparkles, some that have not sparkles, some that are stranded, some that are not. And I think this will be pretty fun. So
one thing that I didn't do proper research on, so I don't know if we're gonna totally, we are not experts on anything. Let's just start with that.
No, back up one step. We do not fancy ourselves experts on anything, I would say, really at all. We just like to, we are immersed in this industry. We've taken a lot of good notes. We've talked to a lot of people. And so we just are making observations that we have had as stitchers that we've helped other people through. So thank you for bringing that up because I think it's important to mention that.
Well, so where I was going with that is within this category, I feel like there's tonal threads, there's overdyed threads, and there's variegated threads. And I'm not going to pretend that I know the exact definition of all of those words. I think there's some gray areas in between. I definitely know tonal versus variegated. Overdyed is a whole, like that's all about the dyeing process. And sometime we'll have to have like a thread dyer on here to really go deep dive into that, don't you think?
Well, we did have Remember Jill likes,
yes,
but I don't know if she specifically talked about like what they were called. She definitely talked about her process, but yes, right. Wouldn't it be fun to do? Let's do that. Yes. Yeah.
So we'll have to work.
If you're interested in that process, there is a podcast related to Silk Road Fibers. So
check that out. So the first one that I would love to talk about is it's kind of a small line. Vineyard Silk, of course, everyone knows, which is a huge line. I think 250 colors or so. With their tone on tone colors, I think they've got about 10. I'll be honest, I only carry these 4 because these are the 4 that we sell all the time, and they're named totally appropriately. This is called Landscape. This is called Earth. This is called Sky. Are you sensing here? And this one's called Sand. And they are just absolutely perfect for all of those items. So It's a cut and go thread. So just like Vineyard Silk, and this is called tone on tone. So I don't know if this is technically a tonal or variegated. I think I just need to stop trying to categorize things, but I love to categorize things. So it's hard for me. But they work really, really well in a lot of situations. And you'll have to bear with me because I've got samples all over the place. This sky thread, I use a ton.
Well, I was going to tell you that you actually introduced me to this thread. I am stitching, almost finished stitching the Great Lakes Good Times that Joanna painted for you from the Plum Stitchery.
Yeah.
And I'm almost positive that that blue is the sky in Great Lakes Good Times. You don't happen to have that in front of you, do you?
Well, I do, but I wasn't going to show that for the sky because I also was going to show it. Apparently I really like variegated threads because it's got really great silk road fibers and soy luster, which we're going to get to.
Okay.
So
I'm sorry, I jumped ahead.
That's okay. I did use the sky in, sorry, I gotta get the sky thread in the sky of this U of M Union building. As a matter of fact, I think I used Threadworks Overdye Sparkle for the sparkly outside parts.
It looks great
sky on the inside.
So I'm sure, and again, so Melissa's usually more organized with the agenda of these things, and I usually jump ahead and kind of screw things up. But I want to say, and maybe you can dial me back, but I want to say, so back to that. So it is not a great idea to use a tonal, an overdye, or whatever we want to call it, for a simple basket weave project necessarily.
But I've got to work around for that.
Okay, yes, but what I'm saying is, look how fabulous that looks, because you've basically done like a little patch, a skip, a little patch, a skip, a little patch, a skip, and it creates this really cool variegation for the sky.
And there it is again. So
yeah, and again, that's
is it a Parisian variegation, a variation, a Hungarian? I can never remember my names of stitches, but
and to your point, that to me, the thread has done a beautiful job of making it look like a sky, because it almost looks like it has clouds too in that particular. So you've done no other thread. I don't think that is just simply
the sky. That's Vineyard tone on tone sky.
And my guess is that's also 18 count mesh. It looks like it might be an over 3 would be, or an over 2 might be your longest stitch. I can't quite see, but to the point, it's not a completely repeated exactly at the same over thread stitch. So it's not continental, it's not basket weave. You've got a lot of variegation going on, which it'll do something different when you do a
so to what I think you're pointing towards, if you stitch this in basket weave, and basket weave you work on diagonal, obviously tent stitch on the diagonal, you end up with stripes. So if you were to use something like this, it would almost look like it was raining.
And some people like that. Some people
it might be appropriate in a certain setting, but if you're trying to make, something like, you don't really want to show off your school tower with the rain, like that just sounds not so great, right? So if any of you were here at our retreat, the Pointing Out retreat in Detroit, Shar was here, who we coined the local legend because she stitches so much and everyone knows her around here and whatever. She actually taught me something about variegated threads. If you want to stitch it in basket weave, but you don't want that striping, she's like, and I don't know why I never thought of this, but somewhere she learned that you stitch it in skip tent and then you go back and you fill it in.
Yeah.
So then you will have the variation, but it'll be more random. It won't be stripy.
So the other thing, and this is going to take us down a very short rabbit hole. I hope a short rabbit hole, because I don't think I've ever talked to you about this, but I was just reminded. So David McCaskill taught me once to lay out, and it particularly worked with another thread we're going to talk about later, but he suggested laying a thread out because you'll be able to see, because threads are dyed in sections. So he says, lay it out. They're usually, it's either like 12 or 16 inches or something, and you should be able to lay it out and see it. And if you are sure to cut it at different lengths, then your repeat is always going to be different. But that is a lot of work. And you need to
go back to being lazy. This is why I don't know this trick.
Well, but I just wanted to point out that you can probably solve the issue in a couple of different ways. But the way I think about it is, and maybe this is wrong, but is there anything wrong in an art form? Maybe not. I just simply don't stitch basket weave with a overdye thread like that. I just don't do it.
would
I either go continental, so I get my hazy sky look, or I just do a different stitch, brick stitch, anything different than basket weave would work. So anyway, just a little tidbit from my brain.
Yes. Yes, because the pooling of colors is an issue, which, you know, honestly, if you look back at this piece, the colors have pooled, but in a
Yes.
really, really good way.
In a perfect way. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it might even be just, you know, checking it out and doing a little test swatch. But again, I'm too lazy for that because I don't have a lot of time to stitch. So I'm not going to test something out. I'm just going to hop in. And if I have to frog it, I frog it. Right.
Right.
So
that's why they make scissors.
that's exactly right. So to your point, so we do carry the whole line, and it's not a lot. So you've got 4 colors or 5?
I have 4 colors, and I used to have it all. I think it's 8 or 9. Right?
Exactly. That's it. That's exactly what I was getting at. It's not a huge line, but it's beautiful. And to the same point, and hold on, let me take a look at my list. What am I moving on to here?
We're up to for Pepper Pot Variegated, which is
so that's what I was hoping, because that's what I was about to say. So in a very, very similar way, this thread is 1 strand, overdye, mostly earthy colors. Not a huge line. Again, we brought in the line, but it takes up the same amount of space as the Vineyard, like a tiny end cap. It's not a lot.
It's about 12 to 15.
I'm sorry.
It's about 12 to 15.
Yeah, exactly. But I have this really cool sample, and I have to be very careful with this because it's not mine. But we are doing this topiary club.
Aw, cute finish.
Didn't that turn out cute?
Really cute.
But you can see the topiary on there, the way that's stitched. It's a Bargello pattern, I believe, a wavy Bargello. I think I can't remember exactly. This is a Patricia sewn canvas and stitch guide, and this thread is that. So again, to your point, it's kind of pooled, but in a great way, because that's what natural trees look like. So yeah. So there's that. And I'm going to set this aside so that I don't break this vase.
Good idea.
If there's anything else to say about this, this comes from Tilly Thomas, Planet Earth Silk.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Pepper Pot version of the Vineyard Tone on Tone, right? I mean,
Same
I think
thing.
they're basically the same thing. But Planet Earth makes another variegated thread that's strandable that you carry, correct?
Correct. So this is their pliable. This still happens to be, yeah, remember when I messed up that whole how many plies and all the, yeah. Is that what you're,
I had to say, make sure we check our numbers on that one.
well,
Back to us not being experts, but we try.
right. So this is applied silk, and it is overdye. And the line, again, is relatively small. It's probably this, even a few less than the Pepper Pot, if I'm just visually thinking. But I love this thread. It's really soft. If you're a silk stitcher, you're going to appreciate this more than you're going to appreciate some of the cottons that we're going to share, but I'm not sure that it really does much different as far as the look. It's a strandable, it's a pliable.
Well, the one thing that you can do to force it to be a little bit different is you said they're in transition. So some of it was 6 ply, and now the new
6 ply.
And the new one is 8, maybe.
Oh gosh, now you're gonna make me go back to
okay
that.
Sorry, we didn't check. So the new one's different, but let's just say it's 6 ply. On 18 mesh, would you usually use 3 or 4 ply?
I prefer, it's funny, and I've actually over the years I've gotten to have a little bit of a lighter stitch. I think it might just be with technique or with practice. So
Right.
I prefer a lighter coverage on this particular thread. So I do 3 ply on 18 count mesh, whereas in Splendor I usually like 4.
Okay, so my point where I'm going with all this is if you cut your lengths, and like I said, David McCaskill might tell us to cut in all different lengths. I'm too lazy for that, but I am a big, when you use a strandable thread, you do need to strand it, meaning pull it out with Megan's wake up.
Oh yes,
right?
wake up.
So you pull it out, and if you cut your length and it's 6 ply, you cut your length and you pull out 1 and lay it down. Whoa, I almost broke something over here. Blind side. 2, and then when you pull out the 3rd one, flip it over.
Yes.
So that you have 2 plies going the same direction, and 1 is kind of been reversed because you're flipping it. And then your variegation is much more subtle.
Yes.
And so you'll get you could actually then basket weave with it, especially if you're doing 4-ply, because then you could do 2 and 2.
Yes.
But the more you keep it the same, the stronger the variegation is. The more you flip flop those strands, the more subtle the variegation is.
You're
And
right.
there's
I'm glad you pointed that out, because that really truly is the difference between, I would say, a 1-strand and a strandable. You can control that a little bit more.
yes, for sure. For
Good
sure.
point.
So anything else about the Planet or Strandable?
I don't think so. The only other thing I would say about a strandable, and we can talk about it in another thread as we go along, but French knots are fun because you can change your ply, and it really looks nice with the strandable thread, I would say. So
Great. And I think I have a sample of that somewhere too. So next up on my list, I was so organized. Here we go. I am organized. I just trying to jump ahead. We talked about when we had our just strandable thread that was solids, we talked about Soy Luster. Soy Luster has, it's kind of more of a matte thread. As you can see, it doesn't have like the sheen of silk. I'm trying to get it to focus. And these are what they call their shadows. So Soy Luster has a solid version and a shadows version. And usually like with this color, we're going to see what color this is. This is Shore. This is the one I use a ton. And there's a solid Shore that's all beige. And then this one that is like kind of whites. And as you can see, it's like they've just thrown like whites in there. So it's its own color. So I would say this is maybe more tonal than variegated. But the shadows line gives a really nice result. And what I love about Soy Luster, they give you a little cheat sheet on the card. So for those of you that can never remember how many plies is appropriate, it says it right on here, 13 count 3 strands, 18 count 2 strands. So I love a good cheat sheet that's built in with your thread.
exactly.
And I use this quite a bit. You had brought up Great Lakes Good Times earlier, which does have the Vineyard tone on tone in the sky. Good Lord, sorry. And the bricks are Soy Luster.
Yeah, and we don't have this thread to suggest as a overdye because I don't think they make it. But if anybody's not familiar with Soy Luster, we don't carry it here, but what we carry is impressions. And I did kind of a tester to try to see and I think, so if you're not familiar with soy, and you are familiar with impressions, that's kind of what that thread's going to do for you. Because do you use a 2-ply on 18 count mesh? Yeah, so that's about what impressions does. And I really enjoyed that Soy Luster. So I guess what I would say, my observation, even though I'm not the expert on it, you are, is that it's pliable, that you need fewer ply, and it's matte. And so it's
actually technically a vegan thread too, which some people are cool. Like, I don't know really for some people why that's an issue, but it's bamboo soy, they say. So
cool.
Okay. And you know what? I might have to pause this can you pause us for a minute?
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. So sorry, there'll be a little jag there, but no worries. Everything's good. So we are going to move on with watercolors, I think is what's up next, correct?
It is.
So this is an interesting thread. And when I interviewed Kathy Reese, she says that there is no other thread like this on the market. Oh. And I take her as kind of a thread expert because if you're not familiar with Kathy Reese, everything she does is counted. And so she's really looking for color and texture when she does her work. So, and I say texture specifically because this is a very textural thread. It looks really bumpy and goofy. And the colors, I don't know if you can see them behind me, but they're on this fixture behind me. The colors are really interesting and a lot more overdyed than tonal to your kind of categorization point.
Some of them are more wild and some of them are more subtle, right?
Yeah, and so this is a cotton thread, which some people are like, ugh. But to your point, it also has a cheat sheet here. And this is from the Karen collection. And so I was going to say, and I guess I'm right, is 1-ply on 18 count mesh. This says 2-ply on 13. I'm going to take it for its word. It's actually a 3-ply thread. We're going to wake it up. Wake up, wake up. So there are 3-ply here. appears to me, I haven't used this a ton. I think I've used it once or twice. It appears to me to be the size about like a Pearl 5 strand, maybe just a tiny bit. It appears thicker, but I think it's the way it's spun because I think it condenses down a little bit more. But it's an interesting thread. I don't have a sample, but like I said, the Kathy Reese product, she uses a lot of them. I'm trying to think of another good reason to use this. Animals might be a good reason, like a teddy bear kind of textured.
And I thought I had a sample. That's why you're seeing me looking down and looking a little dazed and confused.
Yeah. It's a big line.
Yeah, I've used it for sure, and I can't remember where it is. So, oh, here. I think, see this cuff bracelet?
Oh yeah.
I think that is watercolors.
The orange, like the brown orange.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're not getting a great look at it on the screen there, but like I said, it just gives you kind of a little bit of a bumpy texture. And so if you're looking for some texture in a piece, that cuff is a great example because it was so interestingly painted that you were just kind of looking for color and texture. And I would say it was just a little wild. So that helped you kind of achieve that look. So that's why this is great. Yeah. So it's a big line. There's a lot of colors. We kind of culled it down a little bit because honestly, to the naked eye, some of them kind of start to look so close in tone that it's like, why are we, anyway. So yeah,
Well,
cool thread.
So our next thread is also cotton. And I would say that I don't carry the full line of this either. You're fine.
For the very same reason, right?
A lot of the colors, especially the greens, which the green variegateds are my absolute favorite because again, they do the work for you for landscapes, etc. So a lot of the greens kind of start to look alike. But it's really hard to make decisions because they're all so pretty.
Yes.
So Threadworks is also, this is their overdyed, and I believe the base is anchor floss. Do you think that that's true?
Makes sense. Yes. Yes.
And it is so that therefore it's a 6-ply cotton. So usually you're going to use 3 or 4 ply on 18 mesh, 4 or 5 on 13 or 14 mesh. And this is one of my absolute favorites. These little public service announcement. My recollection is these are 20-yard skeins. They also sell these in 5-yard skeins, more to cross stitch shops than needlepoint shops. But if you're ordering from somewhere and you have a big area you want to complete, make sure you get the 20-yard skein. If you get the 5-yard skein, you're going to be disappointed. And one thing we haven't mentioned that really is relevant to, I think, every single thing we've shown, because these are for the most part hand dyed, there is a huge dye lot issue with any overdyed thread. And it's always an issue in needlepoint. We know this, like there's always dye lots and the dye lots can change, but especially in my opinion, with anything that's variegated, your dye lots are likely to be more extreme than they are in a solid. So make sure you know what you're buying, whether it's a 5-yard or a 20-yard.
Plan ahead. Yeah. The only reason I laughed out loud when you said this is a public service announcement is that isn't this entire podcast a public service?
True story.
I'm laughing because we're not sponsored or
Very true. I guess I was pointing out
PSA.
I think that you and I both carry the 20-yard skeins.
Yes.
And we do not carry the 5-yard skeins, but when you're purchasing, make sure you know what you're buying.
It's really the perfect segue into the Weeks Dye Works line. So
can I show you some samples though?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes.
Great.
About that.
I'd love to show off, and I didn't stitch all these, and I've got to make sure I show you the right things. So first of all, we saw this before, but the bell tower is Threadworks beige. So it slowly changes. Great. And I didn't flip flop that. So you can see the more extreme variegation there because I didn't flip flop the threads. And then let's see what else I have. And I also have Prague one, or excuse me, Prague has some Weeks Dye Works in it. The U of M building that we looked at earlier. This building, I also used Threadworks. They have
Looks
some really
awesome.
great
That's a
building
mosaic,
colors.
it looked like maybe on first glance.
There's some mosaic, there's some cashmeres, there's
Yeah,
some
very cool.
basket weave. So you can see where I use the basket weave on this building in the lower corner. It's so hard to point.
Yeah, you know,
So-
that looks very cool. It almost looks like the sun's hitting that building. That's kind of the perfect use of a basket weave with an overdye. I like that.
And so, yeah, so it kind of gives you your stripey, but I think, like you said, it kind of works. And I have one more. Oh, look at the mountains. Holly stitched this. See the mountains on her piece?
Oh,
The
wow.
background, isn't that pretty? And
Yes.
so again, it's pooling a little bit. She's used a decorative stitch.
Yep.
But yeah, it looks really pretty. And I think I have one more, sorry. Oh, the floor,
Hey, don't
on my-
apologize. I think that's what we like to see the most is samples. And I just didn't get my act together this morning. Oh, look at that.
So it's one of the Strictly Christmas Squatty Santas. And yeah, the floor is all in that. And I think and so you talk about Weeks Dye Works, but I know that I use that in my Prague ornament on some of these buildings.
Oh, cool. So on the week. So what you were saying is
Peachy
that this, pardon me.
That peachy one is Weeks Dye Works.
Very cool. So we don't carry the full line of this either. And honestly, we brought this in to really sort of serve the cross stitch community, to your point, because we had a lot of, there is no cross stitch shops kind of in our area or even in our region really. So, so this is a thread that I would say is most often used with cross stitchers. And again, for the only reason that it's in 5-yard
Right.
skeins. And so this is a thread that's a little harder to use as a needle pointer if you're going to use a large area. Because to your point, once again, you're like, again, the perfect segue. It's a rather small skein, which means the dye lot could be an issue, which means you need to kind of plan ahead. And Weeks is a great company to work with, and we can always get it in larger quantities, but we just need to know that you need it. So Weeks is similar to the Threadworks line. I mean, it's a floss base, so it's a 6-ply. The overdye, I would say, in Weeks is more subtle than it is in Threadworks. If you can kind of see these behind me, there's nothing in this line that like has like total like color mashing. Like it's not really exaggerated in any way.
Right.
It's very subtle, very pretty. It works. I love this color. We like a lot for Halloween. It's just that great, vibrant, witchy color. So
Sure.
that's why I pulled this one, but it's a nice line. It's the line I think we probably go to when we just can't quite find the right thing in Threadworks. You know, they're right here by each other. So I can't say that I would use really one over the other except for color.
Right.
Really, I mean, unless you have another observation about that, but
The only thing I will throw in there is we're talking about Weeks Dye Works like they only have one thread.
oh,
Yeah.
exactly. That's not fair. You're right.
So we're talking about their cotton floss. They make overdyed silk,
Ribbon,
pearl,
I think.
yeah, like lots and lots of things. So we're just talking about their overdyed floss. So I just didn't want people to think that we didn't realize there were lots of other products that they make.
Speaking of pearl, because this wasn't on your list, and I know I'm going to throw you off for a second, but I'm kind of a silly girl. We have Pearl 5 in the Threadworks line too. So to your point, the difference of this would be is not stranding. Right?
Cut and go.
Exactly. So yes, but Weeks also has a pearl, and I think they have a ribbon, and to that point even further, Threadworks has Bella Lusso, like a ton of different overdyes as well. It's just that these are just, again, we should be careful to say we are not experts in this, and we also don't carry every single thread that's out there because there is no possibility. So this is just kind of our overview of overdyed threads that we actually carry in our shops, which is actually, I mean, high five to us. This is a lot of threads, girl.
Well, so let's keep going because we still have more to cover.
We do.
Silk Road fibers. We talked about Jill
one of
a
my
little bit
favorites.
earlier. So Silk Road, if you shop the Silk Road wall at either of our shops, you will notice that some of them have red and white striped cards and some of them have green and white striped cards. The red and white, I don't know exactly what word Jill would use, and Jill is the dyer for Silk Road Fibers and the company owner. I would think she would say that the red and white are variegated and the green and white are tonal, but Jill, if you happen to watch this, put something in comments if I'm wrong, because I very well could be. So I am showing you, because we're talking about variegated threads, the red and white striped cards. And you can see that there's a lot of variegation going on in these, in all the best ways. And for a deep dive into Silk Road, please go back and watch our podcast with Jill, because it's really an amazing product. It as a little mini lesson. It started out as a knitting thread that she sourced. Ironically, at the same time, I was hand carding it in our shop, the original base from the knitting thread. She was way smarter than I was. Okay, let's just throw that out there. But it is really a 12-ply silk. So you can rip this in half, you can make it thinner, you can do a ton of different things with this. For the most part, I tend to use it just as is. Sometimes I'll make it thinner depending on the piece, but hopefully I pulled the right colors for this. And again, they're going to change. So this is malt liquor, and I think that's what I used on this. This is Turnip Rock, which is by my cottage. That
I almost said Arch Rock, which is on Mackinac. Yes.
And so I use this here and on all these rocks, and I did not change one color.
And that's 18 count mesh, right?
It is. So it just made it so easy. And as a matter of fact, we'll get to this in a minute, but if you look at the trees, that's Threadworks sparkle. So we'll come back to that too. So
oh, cool.
And I think that's maybe Threadworks or Gloriana in the water. So again, I'm a huge user of this.
Well, and really quick, I'll say, so that is a very, what I would call natural piece. So it's an outdoor scene, and that's these overdyes, especially in those nature sort of colors. I mean, you could use an entire, to that point on that particular ornament, the entire thing could be overdyed and it would be absolutely perfect. And it appears that it almost all was. Some people I think are afraid that it'll be too busy or too much or something. And I don't think it is, particularly when you're looking at natural.
I think the sky is the only thing that I didn't do overdyed in. And I used, imagine this is called tree bark. Guess where I used it?
On that darn tree. And I have to say, I did not enjoy stitching that tree because it was long and short.
It was random. It's usually a naughty word to most needle pointers, but
yeah,
boy, did it work. I mean, does that look like a tree bark? Or
it's amazing. What? It's amazing.
Her thread is
painting. Joanna's painting's amazing. Your stitching is amazing.
And Jill's thread. I mean, this really did all the work.
Exactly right. And I was about to say, I think I would observe that this thread is kind of the most interesting and weird of the overdye group. And I think that's why people are scared of it, but they shouldn't be. It is it's one of the best.
It's so easy to stitch with. And let's see if I can get the camera to focus right. There we go.
Was it on the bonnet?
Yes, isn't that so sweet?
Now that might be toasted almond. And I told you that I was going to bring my toasted almond sample of my food dogs, and I completely forgot because.
Well, there we go. We took care of each other, don't we?
But yes, toasted almond is really my favorite color. Tarnished Brass is another one that's in that family. That's like a really pretty, it almost has like a shine to it. It's one of my favorite threads, and it makes me cringy when somebody comes in and says, that stuff scares me, or I don't like that. I'm like, let me help you, because you should love it.
Yeah, I think, and again, there's a deep dive in it on its own episode, but it looks like really crinkly. But the best thing you can do with it, I'm trying to find the end. If you don't want it crinkly, literally all you do is run your thumbnail and the pad of your index finger, and it flattens out. Look at how flat that is now. I don't know if you can actually see that. And it looks like you have taken this laying tool and laid every single thread so carefully, and it just behaves. It's really a miracle thread. Okay.
It's beautiful.
One of my favorites is Gloriana.
This is, I would say, a lot of people's favorites, which is why we have a hard time getting it, because the poor woman, now her name has just completely shoot. I'm so sorry, Gloriana Dyer lady. You're
she's
so
like a mom. She's a mom and a daughter team.
Yes, and they're so awesome. But
they're
this
awesome.
Thread is luxury in a skein, and it is sheen, it is glory, it is whatever. It sounds like a hair commercial. It's lovely. It's a 12 ply. If you haven't used it, you should. I find it to be a little thicker, than kind of in the same vein as the Planet Earth pliable. It's just a little bit denser than say Splendor. I don't know if that has to do with the dyeing process or the base.
That's what I always think it is. Like it's absorbed some color.
Yeah, it's beautiful. The line is rather robust, I would say. This line includes tonals, barely tonals, and heavy overdyes, if you will. Like some of them don't even look variegated, but they are when you really get in there and you really get going with it. I mean, what else can we say about this? I call it our Cadillac.
I have a really cute sample. Our Ann
the
stitch-
bunny butt.
Look at that grass. That's that leaf green. Do you guys sell that like just gazillion skeins of leaf green every month? I mean, it is so beautiful. And so she did that all, it's some sort of Scotch variation. And she just went for it, and so it does have like kind of that subtle striping, but it's so beautiful, and it behaves really well. I find that I don't have to use sorry, someone's gonna beat me. Tony Maneri is going to be out there beating me with a stick. I don't tend to use a laying tool with Gloriana as much as I need to use it with Splendor.
I think it's because I don't know if it's the dyeing process or the way they skein it or what, but it really does. And that's why it's luxurious. And I think that I think it's the most expensive thread in our shop. It's not an inexpensive thread, but it's because you get what you pay for. It's like luxury. You don't have to strand it. You don't have to play with it as much to get them all to lay like little soldiers and all the things. So I don't know if there's anything more we can say about Gloriana, but it is fabulous.
So one thing you did mention about Gloriana, okay, now I'm looking for my threads that I've lost, is because it's in such high demand, and oh, Megan, I've lost my mind. I had a whole bunch of color works here. So I was getting a little frustrated with not being able to get my hands on Gloriana. So I brought in the Belle Soie from Classic Color Works.
Yeah, I think you should step away and go get your samples, because that's a very cool thread. And
pause for 1 second, because it's right here. I've made
great. You put your finger on it. Okay.
Got my act back together. So this is Classic Color Works. It's also a 12 ply silk, very, very similar to Gloriana. I think it's just as lovely to stitch with. I guess looking at it right this moment, I feel like it's not quite as shiny as Gloriana for some reason, but it still has a lovely sheen to it. And I happen to pick these 4 colors because a lot of their colors I would say are more tonal. This has a little bit more variegation to it. Again, we kind of picked and chose. That's such improper grammar, but we made careful selections and tended to pick things that were more usable in needlepoint, because I believe this is also more of a cross stitch kind of thread. But it does come in, let's see how many yards are on here. 5 yards. So I feel like anytime you see 5 yards, it's almost was designed for cross stitch.
Yeah, isn't that funny? It must have to do, interesting. Yes.
So the colors are really, really pretty.
I don't know if I mentioned that. This is 6 yards, 12 ply.
Okay. Yes. So we have loved this thread. And I have a really great sample right here. Sorry, I'm going to try not to make a big mess when I pick this up, because I had other samples laying on top of it for good reason. We have our strawberry.
Oh my gosh. Did you use that color on all of that thread on all of these?
Quite a bit. So this color is called, and sometimes you just have to love their names. Like, don't you want to, sorry, now I've dropped it.
That looks like Ruby Sherbert.
It's called Foo Foo Flamingo.
Oh,
how cute is that? And that's in these middle stripes here.
I love these strawberries.
A slight variation in there. And then she used carnation pink. In that strawberry.
Oh my gosh.
So they're really, really, really beautiful. And Kelly at our shop, Kelly Uncle, stitched all of the strawberries. There are exclusives from Abigail Cecile, and she and I both fell in love with this thread. So she could not wait to deep dive into it and use lots of it. So she also used a couple other variegated threads. And I think I'll let you talk about the next one, which is Painter's Thread Shimmer, but it is also in one of the strawberries.
Yeah, so I think what we're going to do now is get into the sparkle. But before I do, I want to mention one thing. I'm actually looking at, I'm wondering if you've used it, the Threadworks Overdye Avera Soie d'Alger Overdye. Have you used that?
I don't think I have.
That's one. So you brought in the Classic Colorworks as a or sorry, Belsois. Sorry, I did not take any French, so I struggle with all these words. But you brought that in as sort of a sub-in for Gloriana, and I'm kind of looking to do kind of the same thing. And so we're trying to get some samples of that that Threadworks silk, Strandable silk. So I'll be interested if anybody's used it. I'd love for them to comment. I have not used it, and a couple of our colleagues carry it. And anyway, that's just another kind of sub, because like you said, we all love Gloriana so much. We're having a hard time getting our hands on it. So.
Right.
So anyway.
We both keep ordering it, but when you have, I think right now it's about a 4-month turnaround on orders. So you just have to have something else. And I can't say that I think Classic Colorworks is like secondary thread. It's just another great option. So you're looking
different,
for
and all the color, and one of the reasons why to continue to bring in or have like all these overlapping is really color. It's really color is what I'm, like you're holding something up and you're like, ugh. Weeks Dye Works doesn't have it, but does Threadworks, or does, it's nice to be able to help match color. So anyway, so that's the stranded silks. I've got one thing here that is not a sparkle. It's not a pliable. It's not and that's the painter's thread. They call it braided rayon. Again, not an expert, but I call it the Overdye neon rays, because it's really, that's really what it is. It's rayon, and it's tonal. There are, I don't think, I should check, and I could look at their website, but we probably carry 8 or 10 of these, a blue, a pink, a brown, a green, that's probably it. There's no, to my knowledge, heavy overdye, like the mashup of color kind of situation that some of these do. But this is just another fun, it's neon rays. So, people don't love neon rays, but it's a nice, alternative to a flat, call it silk with a sheen, and a sparkle, which is where we're going next. So where I'm going next is, I would call it the fancy ant to this guy. So the ant that has her glitter on, her gemstones.
Sparkle up, yep.
So this is this to me is more frequently used in the industry. Just I think I see it in more stitch guides. I see it.
What color is that?
So this is a Aruba.
That's what I thought. So here we go. Here's Aruba. Here's Aruba in action, if I can get this up close enough. So
and it's the lighter. So
yes,
so it's got overdye. So my guess is that this is the and again, not the expert, but it appears to me to be this with a sparkle, because it's a flatter ribbon style. It's a little thicker because it has that iridescent look. The iridescence in this are pretty intense, would you call it? So it's not like a subtle sparkle. I mean, it's a true iridescent, and I think that's why they call it shimmer.
And I'm also going to say the dye lot differences in this thread are extreme. So overbuy, and then plan on using your leftovers for little bits and pieces and ornaments or something, because I mean, sometimes you're shocked, and the names are all really cool. We didn't talk about that. Like that one's called Aruba, but a lot of them are,
there's like Matisse. Oh, how funny. Yes.
And all the famous,
there's artists.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. And so they're cool. The other thing that I'll say about this is we have people come in that want to try to buy this, and they're like, wait, that's not the same thing that I already bought. I don't know this again for certain, but I know that this company kind of struggled with packaging for a little while.
About 5 years ago, they changed over.
Yeah. So there's like some that
package, but it was like a plastic baggie where it was just looped.
Exactly. And so I'll say, no, this is the same thing. It appears different because it's just spooled now. And so I just thought I'd throw that out again as kind of a reminder.
And it's what, having been someone who's loved that thread for a long time and used it in both packaging versions, it's way easier to use this way.
Yeah, because it would get kind of tangled up on that little
right
circle of thread that you had in your package. So yes, so this stuff's very cool. It's very fun. It's a rather small line, but it's small but mighty, I would say.
And I showed you the strawberry. I think that's all I had. Oh no, I have one more that I think was that. And I wish I could remember the name offhand, but look at the dome on the Domo. That
Oh,
is
perfect. And that color has changed because that's the same color that I like to suggest for like a bottle, like a brown bottle, like root beer or beer or something. And that color has gotten a little redder over time, I think. Probably just the
to our
dye.
earlier point, right?
Yep. And so it's hard to find those with more of a brown, which I love. So
Right. Okay. So lastly on our topic of the day is Threadworks Sparkle. It's not really called that. It's called Threadrex Krynic Metallic or Threadrex Metallic number 8, Threadrex Metallic number 12, and it is a Krynic base. I think I got that all out.
you got it. And I think we're ending on a high note because I don't know about you, but this is probably one of my very favorite threads.
So I pulled a little sampling of these. Some of them are more tonal. So like this light pink, yeah, I'm really not getting a good.
You got it. No, it looks great.
So that's very tonal. And then some of them are much more variegated, which I think you can see on these. Like this is like a red gold. It's really great on Christmas things. This like mauve color is definitely more variegated. And then I call this the confetti color. I don't really know if that's their name.
It's called Bradley's Balloons is the name of it. And it comes in both the stranded floss and the sparkle. And it's perfect.
Sorry, and I've just dropped it. So
I love it for confetti. I love it for, I just saw somebody do it with words, which I thought was fun.
Sometimes if there's a lot of like small flowers, you can do a bunch of different French knots and jump around with it. So this is, I mean, it only goes in certain places, but when it goes, it is ideal.
So what we had one time, and I'm not sure if there's a lot of canvases like this, but we had a canvas that had like an audience, but it was at a distance. And so there was all speckled color. So you would go in and do all the black because there was black dots and then literally just go in and stitch that. And it made it look like the audience, you know how that is from a distance, almost like this, where it's just like a bunch of different colors and it kind of worked. I think I've shown this sample like maybe 457,000 times, but it's still my favorite. For that sky. So if you've ever tried to stitch one of these rooftop series from Abigail Cecile, the skies are so gorgeous that they're hard to capture. And so an open stitch with that Overdye thread, it's my favorite, my all-time favorite.
Well, I grabbed one that I don't think I've actually shown off before.
Okay.
Holly also stitched this. Holly has stitched so many of the travel rounds from Kirk and Bradley. But look at that water. So it is an open stitch, which is shocking because if you have talked to Holly for more than 5 minutes, even though she's a newer stitcher, newer being like she hasn't stitched since she was 5, she stitched for like the last 5 years. She doesn't really like showing open canvas. And she showed open canvas there with one of the Threadworks watery bluey colors, really pretty. So
yeah, I just only grabbed the coral because this is my favorite. It's
it's just so many
zeros.
So it comes in number 8 and number 12. I use the number 12 on either 12 mesh or 14 mesh depending on what I'm doing with it, and I can use number 8 on 12 and 18 mesh. Sorry,
I think you meant that the thicker one you use on either 18 or 13, and on the smaller one you usually use it on 18. But
I use the thicker one on the big holes and the little holes, and I use number 8 on the little holes.
And truthfully, it's very hard to have the silver bullet answer when somebody says what size, because it really depends on what you're doing with it,
and your personal tension.
Exactly right. So this is the one thread that I always struggle with which size to give people, because I don't know, for some reason it's more flexible or something than Krynic.
Well, and that's another really good point we should talk about. I have a lot, and I apologize if Doug Krynic is watching. I happen to love Krynic. There are some people that really struggle with Krynic, and I don't know if it's because it's spooled and it's not, or I'm not really sure why, and I don't want to go down that hole. What I will tell you is this is a Krynic base, but I think because of the dyeing process, it becomes a lot more supple. And or the staining process, because it is actually already pre-cut for you. Like when you open this up, there's pre-cut links. And it just, people who I say, well, this is a Krynic base, they go, ooh, if they're people who struggle with Krynic for whatever reason. I'm like, no, please try it. And they're like, you're right. It behaves so much better for me. And I think it's because of the dyeing process that it just, it's not as crunchy as Krynic, if that's my technical terms that I usually use. So
And
Anyway.
you know, to my knowledge, I would love somebody to point out to me, because we talk about Overdye sparkles a lot here. I don't know of any other Overdye sparkles. So the Shimmer, the
Well,
Threadrex, is there
sitting
any other?
I'm sitting below the snow, and some of the snow colors to me, I don't know if they're overdyed, but like they're definitely
Sparkle makes
this
them.
is blue and black. This is snow carbon, which is a shop favorite. So I don't know if that's the blend of the metallics or if that's a dyeing issue.
Yeah, that's a good point. The metallic makes it look a little overdye. Same, there's a couple of Silk Lame colors that have like that iridescent that makes the, so, but it's not overdyed silk that it's with.
Correct.
So it is just the, so anyway, crowdsourcing more
Find the look
information for sparkle overdyes.
Yeah, you can find the look a little bit in some of the Silk Lame colors and some of the snow colors, but technically I don't think they're dyed.
So does that wrap up our
I think it does.
Overdye overview? Is that what we're going to call this? The Overdye overview?
Sounds good to me.
You
You're
know
in
that my
charge of
maiden
naming
name
it
was
this
Over. So
Well, thank you for the pauses on my behalf. Life's a little crazy for me today. So I'm sure everything's fine, but yeah. So I appreciate your
worries.
patience with me.
So anybody who has just tuned in and you've enjoyed this, do us a good little favor and hit the subscribe button. All you have to have is a Google account, and it really won't bug you too much. It'll just tell you when we happen to put out a new episode, and that's really the only pings you'll get when you subscribe. But it helps us to help to continue to bring needlepoint information to the community. So thank you for joining us. Is there anything else we need to say except for?
Well, I was just going to throw out there because there's a little confusion. When we first started this, we did this once a week. And we are very fortunate to have had our businesses grow over the course of the last 2 years. So now we drop a new episode every other week. So so in terms of getting notified of a new episode, you're only going to get an email 2 or 3 times a month. So not to worry about getting too much junk.
That's right. And as we all know, things have opened up and there's a little more going on. So everybody's just busier. So hopefully that you can catch up on episodes when you can. So
good.
All right. Well, have a great day, everybody. Enjoy and give us some feedback if you've enjoyed some of the tips or tricks that we've thrown out there. So see you later.
Have a good one. Bye.